Stoneleigh is the only national rail station outside of London to be in Zone 5. Although we are outside of London today, we will be crossing the border into it a couple of times on our walk. It seems Stoneleigh has recently gained a new footbridge with lifts for the first time, bringing step-free access, but the much older footbridge with no lifts can still be seen, but is now blocked up. This is where the footbridge would have led you out to, right out onto a Broadway, with a nice old pub here called the Station. The place to visit in Stoneleigh is the original Cockney Museum, which I think is unironically just outside of London. I thought this was out on the Broadway, but it's not. It's actually tucked in an alleyway at the back of it. It's not yet open. It's too early. So funnily enough, we are actually entering London immediately on our walk today. You can see here that we're in Surrey, but if I cross the road, you can see that I'm now in the London Borough of Sutton here in Cuddington Recreation Ground, where I'm going to be on the hunt for the source of the Beverley Brook. Well, that wasn't too hard to find. Here it is, the source of the Beverley Brook. Shall I stand down there and peer into the pipe? This might be a silly idea because it's quite a sudden drop and it's a bit slippery, but I can make it. Step down here. There we go. Ooh. Alright. Yeah, I can't see anything. I don't know if it was worth it. Now, there's a great trail you can walk alongside the Beverley Brook that starts back at New Malden and follows it to its confluence with the Thames in Putney. And that is a walk I really want to do, to be honest. I've not done it before, but it doesn't come to the source here and some of the lower reaches of it, which I'm going to be discovering today. Already in Cuddington Recreation Ground, we are losing the Beverley Brook as it's heading underground here. Perhaps that's why the trail doesn't start back here at Stoneleigh, but we will come across it again later. I'm in North Cheam, where my only experience of this area was from a journey I intended to make from Malden Manor to St Helier, but the train was cancelled, so rather than wait for the next one, I got the bus. I remember it being rather easy interchange, just turning left at this junction here between the bus stops. I've come into Fairlands Park at the back of North Cheam, where I've come across an information board. It gives me a great bit of local history I did not know about. Brock's fireworks factory, which used to be around here, was the world's largest firework factory at one stage. I got distracted by the information board, but what I was going to say is I've mentioned that journey from Malden Manor to St Helier in a recent video where I actually visited St Helier station for the first time. And what I also mentioned in that video was that there has been suggestions in the past to extend the Northern Line south, ironically, beyond Morden, and one such extension was here to North Cheam. There would have been a station at Morden South, possible station at Stonecott Hill, and the terminus here at North Cheam. Now, although there's no station here today, which is a bit of a shame because North Cheam does feel like a bit of a cut-off area in London, London Transport did purchase grounds here to build a station, and they still own the land today. It's been turned into the London Transport Sports Ground, London Transport being a predecessor to TfL. I'm entering the Hamptons estate now. It seems like this sign here has been left in place since when this was being constructed. Climb over the hoarding, gate locked. There's nothing here. I doubt guard dogs is wandering around the estate now. Feels very American. I think that's what they were going for. It's an unusual little place. You have Mayflower Park wetlands here as well, which is all on the site of the old Worcester Park sewage works. If we climb this hill here, we should come across part of the wetlands. This definitely feels like a unique place to visit in London. I quite like it. And I'm glad that the sun has graced us with its presence as well, because it wasn't forecasted to, and it is quite cold, to be honest. As we leave the Hamptons, we are reunited with the Beverley Brook again, which is already much wider at this stage than the little trickle that it was back in Cuddington Recreation Ground. I didn't realise that my path into Sir Joseph Hood Memorial Playing Fields, which by the way is named after a former MP and Mayor of Wimbledon, would be quite so rural. We have horses here, pylons, gas holders over there, which I'm going to have a look at, but I'm going to have to come off of the beaten track in the park to go and have a look at them. So funnily enough, I'm not actually here for the Beverley Brook. I am here for the gas holders, which have become a bit of a local landmark. They can be visible from many points in southwest London and have been disused for years. But there are talks right now that possibly the land over there is going to get redeveloped soon, which will cause the gas holders to finally be removed, and they are just separated by the Beverley Brook. I'm going to have to make sure I don't slip along here and accidentally fall into the Beverley Brook. I can guarantee you right now, by the way, that ladder was definitely used by someone who perched it against the fence to climb into the grounds there. I've stood in this spot once before. I think it was back in 2019, where quite randomly I was travelling along the railway line and I decided to jump out at Motspur Park Station, which we're going to go have a look at in a moment, and come and see the gas holders here separated by the Beverley Brook. And it's quite weird for me to be back here because it's really the only part of that day which I remember quite well for some reason. If they are going to be dismantled soon, I'm glad I've come back here one last time to have a look at them. I've been meaning to do that for quite some time. Motspur Park Station has changed since I last used it. Had a very old footbridge that wasn't very welcoming, but now has a new one with lifts. I think this only opened last week, so it's very, very new. It does seem like a lot of the area around here is known as West Barnes rather than Motspur Park, even though there's another place called Barnes not too far away in southwest London. Anyways, we're back by the Beverley Brook here. I'm just crossing over it, acting as a border between London boroughs. We're entering Kingston, leaving Merton. And despite there being the playing fields right by Motspur Park Station, it wasn't actually called Motspur Park, was it? Well, I believe Motspur Park itself is in there, which is the grounds to the gas holders. And I've looked on maps, satellite view, and it does look like there's disused tennis courts and even a miniature railway in there. But obviously I can't go in. Maybe one day if it gets redeveloped. It's a very derelict looking view into the former Motspur Park here. Opposite this site though, you do actually have Fulham Football Club's training ground, which is fitting because we were at Craven Cottage not too long ago. So Motspur Park might be disused, but Manor Park here isn't. You get a good view back towards the gas holders over there. I'm going to cut across and head into the trees to loop around in here. I get to walk right underneath the pylons through this park and also right beside the railway line, but that is not the line to Stoneleigh. After Motspur Park the track split, that is actually the Chessington branch instead. I'm back beside the railway line to Stoneleigh now at Worcester Park Station, which sits in between Motspur Park and Stoneleigh. Now the line through here opened in 1859, same time as this station, but for the first 3 years it was known as Old Malden instead, and both Motspur Park and Stoneleigh opened later in 1925 and 1932 respectively. So because we're between two stations we've already been at today, that means we've actually missed out a section of the Beverley Brook. And here it is here. This is the first time it's coming above ground since it went underground in Cullington Recreation Ground. This will be our last sighting of it today though, but another river is coming up soon. Now all of the Beverley Brook seems to just fit within the boundary of London, but we're not. We're leaving it again now into Surrey as we enter the borough of Epsom and Ewell. I've come into Shadbolt Park now, which looks nice enough to walk across. I've always considered Epsom and Ewell to be like an unofficial borough of London. Parts of this was supposed to be in London, but locals at the time opposed to it, which is why you have that weird anomaly of Stoneleigh being the only Zone 5 station outside of London, on National Rail at least. Buckhurst Hill, similar situation, parts of that was supposed to be in London, not Essex, is the only tube station in Zone 5 outside of London. Shortly after leaving Shadbolt Park, I'm now in Oriel Park, and I would say it's these two parks which really drew me out for today's walk. I'd say it's about 3 years ago now, I looked through a London street atlas to help me come up with new walks by scanning through the pages and listing down all of the green spaces I hadn't heard of, hadn't gone to, or didn't plan to go to. I came up with a bunch of new London walks, and today's walk really does stem from spotting Shadbolt and Oriel Park, not Ariel Park, on the map. I actually started a walk 3 years ago in Stoneleigh, with the first destination being Ewell Court House here, that later went into the centres of Epsom and Ewell itself. But I didn't get the train here, I got the bus. Which is why I've not used Stoneleigh Station before today. I explained earlier how I used Motspur Park, and I used Worcester Park Station after I did the 151 bus route. So I won't be following the Hogsmill River here into Ewell like I did 3 years ago, but instead I'm going to be walking a section of it in the other direction, along a path which really got me into walking in the first place, the London Loop. Now, I mentioned earlier how I once intended to use Malden Manor Station, but the train was cancelled. I've since used it on a walk I started there last March, just before I started making videos, and part of that walk did take me along the Hogsmill River, and it was quite muddy. So I'm pleased that this section I'm walking now is not nearly as bad. Now, the London Loop path does loop around the outskirts of London, so it's no surprise that we've come across it here, considering we're near to the border, and we very much are in this case. We saw earlier how rivers can act as boundary markers, the Beverley Brook being the border between the boroughs of Merton and Kingston upon Thames, and here you have the Hogsmill River being the border between Surrey and London. So for the second time today, as we leave the London Loop, we are re-entering London. The Hogsmill River is a great London river walk to do, one that I didn't appreciate enough the first time I did the London Loop. And we actually got a confluence of two rivers here, the Hogsmill and the Bonesgate stream, which heads in that direction. It's quite strange because we've re-entered London here, but it's very rural. This is the Tolworth Court farm fields that we're cutting across, which seems to be a great way to end today's walk. Another great walk you can do is a path that links the North Downs near to Box Hill with the Thames down in Kingston, and I walked that as far as Tolworth because I didn't want to redo part of the London Loop section into Kingston from that point. So for the final section of that walk, I did actually follow part of the Bonesgate stream, but I didn't use Tolworth Station, so I'm going to make sure to do that today. I may or may not have gotten distracted by an abandoned building in a recreation ground before I got to Tolworth though. So from some delightful meadows to the hustle and bustle of Tolworth with its busy roads and roundabout, and its iconic landmark, the Tolworth Tower, which seems to be completely stripped out at the moment, perhaps waiting redevelopment. I did read that there used to be an Odeon cinema where the tower is today. It's a shame that's no longer there, considering we just came across one of them in Holloway and it looked quite nice. Other redevelopment has happened at Tolworth recently, a place called Signal Park. And I was going to say that the 281 was proposed to extend one stop from the tower to serve the new development, but it's already happened. I didn't realise. And we end today's walk at Tolworth Station, which is on the Chessington branch. Now, the Chessington branch was constructed in the 1930s, hence why all of it has a very Art Deco look to it. Seems a lot of stations in southwest London was opened in 1920s and 30s, in the interwar years when development started to grow, London started to grow, became part of the commuter belt. Now, until last year, I hadn't used any of the stations on the Chessington branch, except at the very end, Chessington South. I mentioned how I use Malden Manor. We're using Tolworth today, which means the only one left is Chessington North. I have a walk planned that ends there, but the starting station is outside the oyster zones. I actually think today might be the last walk that started and ended at 2 new stations in the oyster zone for me, which means that we're getting there. We're so close to visiting all of London's stations. In fact, I might even do a trip in the next couple of weeks dedicated to just ticking off more South Western Railway stations in London. Except I've lied to you, I'm not actually at Tolworth. I had enough time for my train that by the time it heads back down to Chessington South and come back, it will be the same exact train. So I thought I would actually catch it one stop to Chessington North, just to tick this one off too, because I might as well. So sneaky bonus station of the day. That might mean I won't do the Chessington North walk anytime soon now. We'll see. I do wonder if there used to be a heritage sign over there. Anyways, I have to cross platform and then get the train back to London. Well, I am in London, but home, I mean.